A new study by INSEAD and Delta Partners identifies 20 of the world's biggest markets for growth for mobile telecommunications in the emerging world. What opportunities do these markets present, and where are the challenges? Joining us is Vinod Nair, the Asia head for Delta Partners, to discuss the report's findings. Welcome to INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you, Monetizing. Pleasure to be here.
The 20 countries today represent more than 4 billion mobile subscribers in emerging markets. Penetration levels are already high. So where's the remaining growth coming from?
Our research indicates that if you take all D20 markets as a whole, we're talking roughly about 250, 300 million people who could still become first-time mobile subscribers. And it's true that it's mainly in markets in South Asia, markets in Africa, markets in Latin America. So in our list, that includes everyone from Brazil to Nigeria to India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, who fall into that bucket. The other countries, most of them have already witnessed very high subscriber penetration, and there isn't a lot of room left for new subscribers to enter the market unless it is what we call the youngster phenomena. Young people who become independent mobile subscribers in their own right.
Several of these markets are characterized by fierce competition between telecom operators, often driving prices down to unsustainable levels. Will pricing remain this low, or will we start to see some sort of pricing readjustments?
This is one of the reasons why there was a lot of exuberance about the telecom sector in some markets, and then investors over the last 5 years in some markets have had a really difficult ride. And the reason was because while the markets held potential, the fact that there were a number of new entrants in those markets resulted in irrational pricing. It led to pricing levels in some markets. India is a good example, Indonesia is another example, where the pricing levels were just not sustainable. So going forward, it's a delicate balance where the regulator has to play a key role, where the regulator should always encourage an adequate degree of competition in the market, but also try and ensure that you don't end up with irrational short-term behavior, which could actually be detrimental for the industry as a whole and therefore to consumers as well.
Why is monetizing data services such a big challenge?
Many markets, you see a big disparity in the profile of the mobile subscriber base. So some markets still have a very large percentage of mobile subscribers who are on prepaid phone or on prepaid using feature phones and don't necessarily use a lot of mobile data. But then you also have a very large and significant percentage of the youth population in some of these markets who are already very heavy users of mobile data services. And the question about how do you monetize that usage is a very live question today.
Mobile telecommunications has been hugely successful. But looking ahead, where do you see the greatest challenges for the sector in the emerging world?
The biggest challenge most mobile operators are facing is the challenge of generating enough returns from the business so that they can continue to invest into the business. And I think the pressures are coming from consumers on the one end who obviously would like to receive services for either free or for very low pricing, and the pressure from what we call over-the-top players, OTT players, who very often directly reach out to the end consumer and in the process benefit from some of the revenue streams like advertising, which then doesn't accrue to the mobile operator. Pricing, therefore, is one key challenge. I think the challenge facing most operators today is you're moving away from what used to be a sort of a one-size-fits-all approach, which is true for voice, which is largely true for SMS and basic data as well, which is everybody uses essentially a phone for voice calls. And now you're getting into, on the consumer end, a much more segmented approach, saying, you know, I need to deal with segment A differently from segment B and differently from segment C. And if segment A brings me a certain amount of value, I can afford to, for instance, subsidize their handset. I can afford to actually treat them as prime customers for customer service. But segment C, on the other hand, may be just a marginal customer for us today. And in order for me to still profitably treat that segment, I need to look at the cost structure that I have today.
Vinod, thank you for joining us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you, Monetizing. Pleasure being here.